I found someone worth my time. My name is Miles Hartley, and I am a 44-year-old commercial architect living in Savannah, Georgia. One evening, I sat in my home office staring at an email from my wife of 12 years, Kendra, who was supposedly at a yoga retreat in Arizona. The timestamp read 11:22 p.m. her time. The email said, "I've moved your inheritance into my personal account. It's better this way." Attached was a blurry photo of her with a bearded man on a balcony. Sunset behind them, wine glasses in hand. Her smile was one I had not seen in years. I closed my laptop, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared out at the backyard we had redesigned together 3 summers ago, the stone path I had laid while she planted hydrangeas along the edges. All that effort for a home she clearly had no intention of returning to. That money, $587,000 from my Aunt Elaine, was not just cash. It represented the woman who took me in after my parents died when I was 14, who worked double shifts at the hospital to put me through college, and who left me everything with one simple note: build something that lasts. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no texts, no explanation, just silence, as if she had already moved on to her new life. The signs had been there for months. Her yoga retreats became more frequent. 2 days became 4, then week-long trips. Her phone was always face down. Passwords changed, conversations shorter. 3 months earlier, she had asked strange questions about the inheritance. Where exactly the money was, which account it was in, whether we should diversify. I had nodded, saying I would think about it. Now, reading her email again, I noticed she had not even bothered with greeting, just the declaration and the theft. I typed 6 words in reply. Thanks for letting me know. Then I shut the laptop, finished my water, and went to bed. Tomorrow would be a long day, but lying in that king-size bed alone, I realized something that should have hurt but didn't. I slept better knowing she was not coming home. What Kendra never knew was that I had sent something wrong months ago, and the inheritance had never been where she thought it was. Her attempt to take it gave me everything I needed. I met Kendra 15 years ago at an industry conference in Charlotte. She was launching her wellness brand and looking for architects to design her first brick-and-mortar space. I was 5 years into my career, hungry for projects beyond office buildings and parking structures. We married within 3 years, built a life in Savannah where my firm was headquartered, and bought the Craftsman on Victory Drive with the wraparound porch she had always wanted. We never had children. Her choice. The business is my baby, she would say, and I understood. My buildings were mine. For 8 years, it worked. I designed. She grew her brand. We traveled, hosted dinners, and looked good together. Then my Aunt Elaine got sick, cancer, fast and merciless. I took a 6-month partial leave to care for her in Atlanta. Kendra visited twice. Hospitals depress me, she explained, and I did not push it. When Elaine died, she left me everything. The money shocked me. I had no idea she had invested so carefully. Kendra seemed shocked too, suddenly more interested in financial planning than ever before. We should put it toward expanding the business, she suggested at dinner one night. She meant her business. I told her I needed to think about what Elaine would have wanted. That was the first crack. Others followed. Kendra began traveling more, her calls shorter, voices in the background falling silent when I asked who she was with. Our neighbor Frank casually mentioned seeing someone drop her off late at night when I was away at a conference. I thanked him for the bread his wife sent over and said nothing, just filed it away. Then came the password changes, the abrupt financial conversations, the backyard phone calls where her laughter sounded different. When I asked, she claimed it was Patricia from the studio, though Patricia had left 8 months earlier. I nodded, said nothing. The foundation was cracking, and only one of us was honest about it. 2 weeks before her final retreat, my firm's financial advisor called. Someone's been trying to access your trust accounts, Jerry said. They use your personal info but could not pass security protocols. I knew immediately which accounts. That night, Kendra suggested consolidating our accounts. It's silly to have so many separate logins, she said, not meeting my eyes. We should simplify everything. You're probably right, I told her. The next day, I drove to Atlanta to meet Rita Wallace, my aunt's attorney for 20 years, now mine. I explained everything without emotion. Rita assured me the irrevocable trust was secure, and that any attempt to move those funds would constitute financial fraud. We documented everything and set up alerts. When I returned home, Kendra was packing. She kissed me briefly before leaving, already distant. I might extend this one, she said. Really dive deep into the practice. I helped with her bags, watched her drive away, then went inside and opened our shared cloud storage. In a folder labeled Home Renovation Ideas, I found what I was looking for: screenshots of my accounts, copies of statements, notes about transfer protocols, even a photo of a whiteboard showing my inheritance minus 20%, marked as a transfer fee. She had been planning this for months. I closed the folder and walked through the house with its carefully chosen furniture and artwork that told the story of who we pretended to be. And I felt a strange calm settle over me. Not the rage or grief I might have expected, but a clarity that surprised me. For the first time in years, I saw our marriage for what it truly was: a transaction that Kendra had chosen to terminate because something more profitable had come along. I slept in the guest room that night and began making calls the next morning. By the time her email arrived 5 days later, I had already set everything in motion. I waited exactly 24 hours before making my first move, offered no emotional response, no desperate texts or calls, just steady, deliberate steps. I forwarded Kendra's email to Jerry and Rita with the simple note, "Documentation requested." Both acknowledged receipt without needing further explanation. Then I called Thomas Webb, a divorce attorney Rita had recommended during one of our earlier hypothetical conversations, and his secretary scheduled me for that afternoon. By noon, Kendra had texted, "Did you get my email?" I replied only yes. Minutes later, she sent, "That's all you have to say?" I ignored it and drove downtown to Thomas's office, where Rita joined us by video. The attempted transfer creates a paper trail, Thomas explained after reviewing Rita's documents. The funds were inherited, never commingled, and maintained in a trust structure. She openly admitted to attempting unauthorized access. "You should file immediately, citing financial misconduct. Georgia law allows it." I signed the paperwork before leaving his office. At 4:30 p.m., my phone lit up with Kendra's name. She skipped greetings and went straight to accusations. "You're being childish. This doesn't have to be difficult." "I agree," I said evenly. "Then let's be adults. The money is already moved. Fighting will only cost more in legal fees." "Where are you staying?" I asked suddenly. She hesitated. "Why does that matter?" "Just curious where home is now." She pressed on, ignoring the question, talking about her lawyer drafting settlement papers. "Who's your lawyer?" I asked. "David Lawrence. He's already reviewing everything." I wrote the name down. "That's helpful." She snapped at me, frustrated that I remained calm. I kept my tone neutral, told her I appreciated her concern, and after a tense pause, she softened, saying this was the best, cleaner than dragging it out. "You're right." I agreed. Cleaner is better. After we hung up, I gave Thomas Lawrence's information and sent Kendra a text, taking some time to process. "We'll reach out when I'm ready to discuss details." She responded immediately. "Don't wait too long. Papers will be ready by Friday." Perfect. At 6, Rita called to report that the trust company had blocked 3 more unauthorized transfer attempts that very day, all carefully logged with IP addresses, timestamps, and device identifiers. They traced to Scottsdale, Arizona, not Sedona as Kendra had claimed. Worse, suspicious activity had also been flagged from our own home network a month earlier, downloads of account details and transfer protocols. I thanked Rita, hung up, and walked to the house that suddenly felt more like evidence than a home. In the kitchen, I opened the 20-year-old scotch we had been saving for our 15th anniversary, poured myself a glass, and thought about how Kendra believed she had set a trap, when in fact she had walked straight into one. The next morning, David Lawrence called. His tone was cautious. "Mr. Hartley, I'm representing your wife in your separation. She's indicated you're open to a straightforward settlement. Is that what she said?" I asked, letting the silence stretch until he admitted she had provided account statements and was awaiting transfer confirmations from the bank. I stayed neutral. Has she also mentioned the irrevocable trust my late aunt established and the legal impossibility of what she claims to have done? He fell silent. Mr. Lawrence, I suggest you verify your client's information before proceeding. My attorney will forward the relevant documents today. After the call, I visited Brightstone Bank, where Harold, the manager, revealed something else. Over the past 3 months, Kendra had withdrawn nearly $178,000 from our joint accounts through escalating transfers to an external account. The account, as Harold confirmed, was with Northern Lakes Credit Union. Opened 8 months earlier in Kendra's name only, tied to an apartment address in Scottsdale. She had been building a new life for months. Back at Thomas's office, we reviewed the documents just as his assistant patched in a call from David Lawrence. His tone had changed completely. It appears my client may have misrepresented certain aspects of the financial situation, he admitted. Given the new information, perhaps we can take a revised approach. Thomas responded firmly. The divorce has already been filed, citing financial misconduct. The documentation speaks for itself. After the call, Thomas looked at me. He'll drop her by the end of the day. No attorney wants this tied to their name. What about the money she already took? I asked. We'll include it in the filing, Thomas said. Let her explain to a judge why she created a hidden residence and drained marital assets. I nodded, though I felt strangely hollow. The betrayal cut deeper than I had realized. It was not impulsive, but carefully planned. Carried out for months while she slept beside me, sat across from me, and made plans for a future she had no intention of sharing. Finally, I said, "There's one more thing. I need to know who he is. Not for confrontation, not even for the divorce, but simply to understand the full scope of what I had missed while I thought we were building a life together." That evening, Thomas nodded and assured me he would have someone look into it, and just a few hours later, my doorbell rang. A courier stood there holding an envelope addressed to me, and inside was a letter from David Lawrence formally withdrawing as Kendra's attorney, with copies sent to both her and the court, along with a short note from Thomas that read, "First domino." Minutes later, my phone lit up with Kendra's name. I let it go to voicemail, and after 3 more calls, she sent a text demanding to know what I had done. But I ignored her, eating a sandwich at the kitchen counter, until an email from Rita arrived with the subject line update, explaining that the trust company had completed its investigation into the unauthorized access attempts and documented months of detailed logs, IP addresses, and timestamps, with the matter now referred to their legal Department for Potential Criminal Investigation, though no action was required from me at that time, and I simply forwarded everything to Thomas. Around 9 p.m., another text from Kendra appeared, insisting we talk, but I replied that it would only happen through her new attorney. She tried to downplay her actions, claiming she'd been angry when she sent the email and hadn't actually moved anything. But when I mentioned the access logs, her pause was long, and when she finally asked what access logs, I sent back just one question. Who is he? 20 minutes passed before she admitted his name was Jason Berkeley, claiming he was just a friend helping her through this. But my search revealed more. He was a former investment broker turned yoga instructor in Scottsdale, exactly the kind of man who'd been at my house while I was away. The next morning, I asked our neighbor Frank if he'd recognize a man he saw dropping Kendra off. And after showing a photo, he confirmed it was Jason and agreed to provide a statement. By late morning, Thomas called with news of complication. Kendra had hired Philip Barnes, a notorious and aggressive divorce lawyer, who had already requested an emergency hearing to contest the financial misconduct claim, arguing that all financial decisions had been mutually agreed upon. The hearing was set for Monday, just 3 days away, and I thought about the Scottsdale apartment, the secret account, and Jason before telling Thomas we'd give Barnes something to think about. That afternoon, Thomas sent Barnes a package containing everything: the trust logs, bank records of systematic withdrawals, the Scottsdale lease, Frank's notarized statement, and even screenshots of Kendra's notes on access to my accounts. And by 5 p.m., Barnes was already on the phone requesting an urgent meeting to discuss settlement. Thomas relayed the offer. A clean split. She keeps what she's already taken but makes no further claims, while I keep everything else, including the house and inheritance. But I countered, saying she must return half of the joint account withdrawals and sign a non-disclosure agreement. And in exchange, I wouldn't pursue fraud charges. The morning of a hearing, Kendra and Barnes arrive at the courthouse only to be met with Thomas holding a settlement agreement. No judge or public spectacle required. I watched through the glass as Kendra's expression shifted from defiance to defeat while Barnes whispered in her ear, and minutes later, she signed the agreement, agreeing to return $89,275, renounce all claims to the inheritance, and remain silent about our marriage and divorce. After I signed, I slid her an envelope containing the password she would need to retrieve anything she left behind, and for the first time, her eyes met mine, searching for anger or triumph but finding neither, and when I told her it was never about the money, only about something much deeper, she looked more lost than I had ever seen her before Barnes guided her away. 6 months later, I sold a house on Victory Drive, moving into a downtown loft with fewer rooms and fewer things, while Rita helped restructure my aunt's inheritance into a foundation funding scholarships for aspiring architects who had lost parents. And our first recipient was a girl whose essay about designing spaces I feel would have made my aunt proud. One afternoon, I found an envelope in my building's lobby with no return address, only a check for $89,275, and a note that read simply, the rest of what I owed, and signed because no signature was needed. That evening, I walked along the riverfront where Kendra and I had once dreamed of opening a wellness space, a dream that had died long before our marriage did, and I sat watching cargo ships pass, the check in my pocket destined for another scholarship. When my phone buzzed with a text from Jerry confirming dinner and hinting at introducing me to someone new, I realized I had just enough time to head home, change, and meet the night with simple decision, to say yes to whatever came next. Sometimes the strongest response to betrayal isn't revenge, it's rebuilding.